So if you can just do...
Can I just ask for Richard, our first speaker, to come to the front? We're trying to queue up his presentation. And Richard, who's Chief Executive of Voluntary Sector North West, is going to talk about transforming public services.
Oh, thank you. Can we hear me? Is the microphone working at the back? That's be careful. Morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me down to speak at this conference. It's nice to have made the journey from Manchester via Birmingham yesterday to come and be here. I've got a presentation that I put together about a year ago. It first started when I was asked to do something for one of the universities, and they wanted just an overview of what was going on in the sector, and I found that really challenging to do. And I sat awake one night and just started with this list of things that I wanted to talk about, and it ended up with a presentation called Some of the Things That Keep Me Awake at Night. So I'm going to give an overview of what I think are the big issues for the voluntary sector, because I think these things are intertwined. So you can talk about one area of public services like paper, but if you don't look across the board at other policy areas, it doesn't start to make sense. Now, these are from my experience and the things that are really hitting home, particularly in the North West. I think there are lots of things we've got in common with the South West. We always used to talk about regional strategy planning, how the South West and the North West used to sit at this place where our growth, our GVA was not very good, but our people loved living there. And that was always North West and South West were always compared in that way. You might disagree with some of these things. I'm happy to enter into debate about them throughout the day. You also might have some things to add. There are other things last night that were keeping me awake that I still want to add to this. So here we go, if he gets this right. You'll be able to read that because that's the list of the things that just can't keep me awake at night at the moment. And I'm going to try and cover most of them, and given I've got about 20 minutes, that means I'm going to have to speak fairly fast, so please try and keep up with me. So, Open Public Services White Paper. A document that came out a few months ago now that expresses how the services are going to be opened up. Lots of stuff about competition in there. Lots of stuff about competition. I'm not sure whether there's stuff in there about co-production, about the things that I think are important about working with communities to develop the solutions locally to some of the big problems of today. It has in there, inherently, a belief that market forces drives quality. That if we compete, we will eventually get quality. I'm not sure that's an equation that I always agree with. I think that's really difficult. So does the market drive quality? And actually, is it just a paper that's about privatisation, but uses voluntary sector and social enterprise as a Trojan horse for privatisation? It becomes acceptable when it's couched in the terms of voluntary sector and social enterprise, but really, is this about privatisation? Will we be able to compete as a sector with big private organisations when these services are opened up? Things in there that it worries me. It talks about the work programme as a really great example of opening up opportunities for local small organisations. Right, if any of you've got evidence about that yet, I'd be really pleased to sit and talk to you. Talks about level playing field. I'm not sure I always want a level playing field. Actually, sometimes I want things to be biased. I want things to be biased around social value. What's the social value that's going to be driven by delivering some contracts? I don't want it to be level playing field. Usually comes back to what does it cost? What's the price of some form of contract that's going to be delivered? And a thing I will come back to again. What about consultation? So it's a big consultation. We rushed a consultation over last Christmas. We were told we've got 4 weeks. It's over Christmas about commissioning from the voluntary and community sector. We weren't like mad to send in a response to that. We sent in a response. We accepted that they ignored the compact because they needed to get this paper out, which then took another 4 or 5 months to come out. And we've never been told what our consultation responses said. We've never been told. There's a couple of them that you should look at and think about. Cuts. The website that we've got that was trying to capture the cuts, I think there were only about 51 from the South West mentioned on there, but actually we know that it's much bigger than that and much deeper than that, and you could probably go to a local authority area and find more than 51 cuts. It seems to be more severe in the most deprived areas. You know, I was keep arguing with some of our national voluntary organisations that the messages they're currently writing to local authorities saying don't cut the voluntary sector disproportionately. My question to them is, when did you say to the government, don't cut the deprived areas disproportionately? Why are you picking on local government when actually some of the issues about deprived areas go back to central government decisions around area-based grants, that type of thing? So where's that message coming from? Is the transition fund come through, almost feels as though it came through too early actually, and we're not seeing the full benefits in my region of the transition fund. The cuts have become the accepted truth. We can only talk about cuts. We can't talk about any other alternative. We can't talk about increasing spending in an area. And Whitehall versus Town Hall is a bit about, actually, whenever we've had ministers come from London or senior civil servants, they're very good at washing their hands of anything that you ask and say, that's a local decision. And then locally you get, these cuts have been imposed, and you end up with this fight, and people are really happy to have that fight. Central government happy for you to fight with local government. I worry about debt. I'm not sure we're getting rid of the debt. I just think that we're transferring the debt into different places. So, you know, personal debt. I was talking to this skills funding agency the other day about how there'll be loans in further education very shortly for if you want to do the qualifications. Removal of the MA, HE, we all know what's happening there. Private sector debt. Payments by results, how many of these huge clients are living on debt or borrowing money, and how much of the private sector having to borrow in order to play there. Local authorities have the general power of competence, that means they can start to take out significant loans, and actually, voluntary sector, we've been encouraging to it. I've already had a conversation with one person today who was talking about the organisation that they've taken on in order to play, but loans seems to be the message that comes from government. I'm still not happy 15 years of working in voluntary sector infrastructure, any voluntary organisation knock on my door and say, do you know what, if we just had access to loans, the world would be a better place. It never happened to me yet, funnily enough. So I'm not quite sure where this big national push on loans comes from. Oh, young people, and today, big announcement today, we will tip over the 1 million with young people unemployed. The only answer the government seems to have come up with is National Citizen Service. I'm not sure that that really answers any of the questions that really are out there for our young people today. If you've read the evaluation of the Future Jobs Fund, you will see that just about everybody accepts it as a success. Everybody accepts it as value for money. And I tell you, I could take you around social enterprises across the country that develop their business and have created great sustainable funding models on the back of Future Jobs Fund. Why can't we have it back? Yeah? Why can't we have the Future Jobs Fund back? If I was to do one thing after today, it's go back as an e-petition up, started by a young person who was on it, go back and sign that e-petition, do something for that 1 million young unemployed. And there's something that bothers me actually at times is that as a sector, we end up in discussions about, oh, how can we deliver public services? Oh, how can we do this? And we forget the things that we exist for. Don't we exist to highlight the injustice of that? Don't we exist to push that and try and get government to do something about changing unemployment for young people? Eric Pickle said localism, localism, localism. Those were his 3 priorities. Great. In fact, it's not the localism bill anymore, is it? It yesterday became the Localism Act. I thought about reading it last night, so it was 495 pages long, so stopped. So if anyone wants to synthesise it for us, that would be great. I'm not sure we've seen how it's going to play out yet. I think there are a few things that bother me. I think there's a bit of a localisation of blame and a centralisation of control. The minister's now got more powers than he had before. I sort of used the phrase bully with money, which came up at a meeting I had with VSNW, which is where, you know, Eric Pickles will say, we'll put up £250 million so you can collect your bins weekly. Now I thought collecting bins was a local decision. Yeah? He will say, I've not imposed anything, I have not created any legislation that says you should collect bins weekly. What he's done is he's using the money to do the talking. So they've ditched the legislation route of telling you what to do, and they're using money. Because at a time of very little money, when they throw money around, it's there. So there's a bully with money. Here's how we want you to implement it. 750 million off council tax, so you don't raise council tax. 250 million for bins. Funnily enough, in total, the amount of money that was needed for the Future Jobs Fund the last time round, how about we just recycle that money into the Future Jobs Fund? Andrew Stunnell said he had a fourth priority, that was localism. Now, I'm worried that the localism bill, is it a right to challenge, or does it turn into a right to privatise? Do we challenge how they do the local parks and then discover that goes out to tender and Circle are all of a sudden doing all our parks? Is it right to buy, or is it a right to liability? I know 2 local authorities that went to the sector and went, we'd like to give you all 24 of our community centres. They weren't doing that out of some empowerment of their communities or trying to help them. They were trying to get a huge liability off their books and say, hey, you have that liability, we can't deal with it anymore. We need to be careful of these things. Is it the right to build, or is it a right to destroy some of our green belt? We need to be really careful about when it comes to the implementation of these policies. It really could go the wrong way. The localism bill creates great opportunities and in many ways should be applauded. But, localism act, but we need to be careful of where it goes. Big lottery, I get concerned about the big lottery and the way it's approached things. I had a big fight with them about solicited bids. I've got to say they're very good at listening, a big lottery. But they issued a number of solicited bids to organisations. A little aside, it's the type of thing that frustrates me. One of them they gave, I apologise if anyone's here from there, they gave a big grant to Media Trust. And they said, you know, they're the only organisation that does this. And actually I said, well, do you know what, I'm a trustee of an organisation in Manchester that does exactly this. And they said, but you're not national. It's like, actually, we are. But, and this is a classic at times, but if you're based in London, people can perceive you as national. If you're not based in London, you're not national. Yeah? It works for you too, good. That message works there. It was classic. We're working all over Europe with the charity I work with, but we're not national, no. But Media Trust are, and I've never seen them in the Northwest. Anyway, that's my gripe there. Sorry, I carry a lot of chips on these shoulders. The transforming local infrastructure, that type of thing, I think the lottery take a big risk when they take government money and administer it for them. Because I think they are one of the best funders that are going for the sector, and I think they're excellent. But they start doing too much how the government wants them to do it. They start to lose some of my trust and some of the sector's trust in the way they go about things. Big transforming local infrastructure was a real danger, I think, to their reputation in terms of how it panned out in many areas and created battles, unnecessary fights, and will leave some blood on the carpet. And the lottery are not really empowered to do much about it because that money is coming from central government. The government aren't paying them an awful lot of money to administer it. And I think we need to be careful about the consultation that closes, what date is it? It closes on the 18th. Just have a look at the big lottery consultation if you haven't yet. I'm worried about the use of the third social investment in there. It just needs tweaking. The lottery, I think, should help social investment get off the ground. It shouldn't be about social investment. We don't want the lottery moving into that area wholesale. Otherwise, you could see write a big cheque to Big Society Bank. Added value to government funding, we need to make sure that's really hard line and strong on that. And at the moment it says majority funding to VCS. Now I know if you speak to the guy who runs the lottery, he will say, look, we do 80-90% and we will intend to continue to do that. It doesn't change the fact that the line in that says majority. 51% would do, wouldn't it? It might not be him running the lottery at some point. We need to change that language in the consultation. The Elsewhere Now, one of them organisations I really like to have a go at, they keep me away. They were a spin-off from that hugely successful Big Society network. Yeah, you're all members of Big Society. No, you're not. Crikey, because I've never seen them in the Northwest, actually. So I went to see. They've got £800,000 to develop stuff that was for community groups to grow, and I was confused by that. That was that lottery money again, because actually there's lots of other infrastructure out there and it doesn't bear any relation to the other infrastructure work. And their aim is to create the biggest citizen-owned mutual in the country. Well, actually, what is that as an aim? I don't know what you want to do, not who owns you. What a bizarre setup. But I went to see Paul Twitty speak, because I thought, you know, he's the founder of this, he's clearly inspirational. He stood up and his first words were, I stand from the position that Britain is broken. And as soon as he said that, I was lost, because I cannot stand it if we start from the position that everything is wrong, everything is down, we're all just trying to do some good. I worry about the F word. We've seen equalities off the agenda and everything is about fairness. If you keep saying things are fair for long enough, it starts to become your own truth. There is no framework for fairness. We can't measure fairness. We've had the Prime Minister and the Deputy stand on the same platform and tell you the voting system's fair. The other one said this voting system isn't fair. It's a really subjective thing. With equalities, we have a real way of measuring. We've gotten used to that approach. It's a downside to localism. How do we make sure minority groups have a voice, are represented, are dealt with at local levels? It's used to reallocate resources. I'm a school governor in an area. We used to get a lot of money because we're in a deprived area. The money has been spread to the wealthier areas of the borough because it's not fair that we had so much money per pupil. Yeah, it's easy to describe it like that. And when competition and choice rule the waves, and this was from the last government and has continued, it is always those that are less well placed in society that lose out. There is nothing that drives equality around competition and choice, especially in the free market. You heard me say about language, broken Britain, sick society, problem families, and I'm the one, when I meet with government, that they tell me that I'm negative. I'm not sure. That doesn't suggest a bit of negativity in their side. Volunteering. Where are we going with this? I mean, actually, I thought I needed to put the word interns up there last night. I was thinking interns, that bothers me, because that seems to be a posh way of saying we're going to use somebody for free for as long as we can. I'm getting really bothered about the use of interns. When is a volunteer not a volunteer? How are we abusing volunteer centres through the work programme in particular? Will we have people who are looking to reward volunteers in so many different ways? There was a talk about paying council tax rebates in one of our areas for special constables. To me, if you get a council tax rebate, that's a payment. Therefore, you're paying me, so pay me the minimum wage if you're going to pay me. Don't start to play the system. And also, that type of reward will be allowable for good volunteering, being a special constable, working at the library, doing something in the public sector. It won't be if you're setting up a group to challenge the council about their library cuts, or if you're trying to set up something that might be seen as not quite in the direction that the state wants. A real danger for volunteering, and volunteering's got to hold hard to its roots, I think. I'm not convinced that volunteers delivering public services at all. And then we have the worst example of all. I don't know if you call it the Birmingham Police, if anyone came across it. You cannot make a police officer redundant, but what you can do is forcibly retire them after 30 years. Birmingham did that, and within a week they had letters asking them to become special constables. Yeah, that sort of big society at its worst in terms of that type of thing. NHS reform, is it moved towards privatisation with the qualified provider model? So many unknowns about clinical commissioning consortia. If you can get your heads around this, you are a better man than that. I'm speaking tomorrow with the Department of Health at an event because they're perceived to be ahead of the game on clinical commissioning consortia. And I tell you what, I don't think there are so many unknowns. They don't know how much money they've got to run. I don't know, you might tell me I'm wrong, but I still don't think they know. They don't know how much money they've got to run their commissioning support function. So they don't know whether they're designing Rolls Royces or Ladas at the moment. They really don't. So how are we meant to start to engage with them? They really don't know some of the questions of accountability. So how are we meant to get in there? They're needing time to work out how they're operating. And I'm not sure. I've never been in a place where I've not met so many people who don't know the answer, who you would think would. So when will there be clarity? I need to crack on the other side. Health Watch. Health Watch. Again, I've got a staff member who's seconded to Health Watch, to help set up Health Watch. She comes back and goes, this is how it is. I go, oh God, I hope it isn't. I'm in the Department of Health, and they go, well, no, we don't quite mean it like that. So I go back to my colleague and she says, well, this is the directive we've been given. I go, well, this is incredible, you know. This thing about you need to be new organisations, you need to be body corporate, you will be statutory bodies, so you cannot exist within a current organisation. Can it be grants? Must it be tendered? All sorts of confusion going on all over the country about Health Watch. Any clarity would be great. And you can probably, if you want an answer to suit you, if you ring up enough people, you'll get one. Yeah? So that's a tip for you. And what about public health? Because actually that is the big arena for the sector, the public health agenda. But so much has been lost in the clinical. We're all getting overexcited about the clinical commissioning consortia agenda. It's a public health agenda. I'm really sorry for the local authorities who are trying to work at taking on this whole new world at a time when they're trying to deal with cuts, difficulties, their own problems. So that's a real challenge, and I think we can play a role in supporting that. But still no clarity on how big the ring fence will be, how much money will come down to local authorities, and how much money is going to stay in the hands of the National Commissioning Board, that very small quango, because the government don't like quangos, that will be at the top of their health service, the National Commissioning Board, could be really dangerous. Talking to government and finding a problem. Consultations, fed up with not hearing about responses. We've not heard from a few that we have done from the sector. The OCS Strategic Partners Programme, so London biased, that it's untrue, and I'm not sure that it serves the sector really well. Increasing regional outposts from government as they realise they need some regional intelligence, but not sufficiently funded for the people to do their work out and about in the regions, or not feel that that's got the pulling power that it might. We've got an OCS, you've probably our OCS person is here today, the OCS person. They were going to be, but they're not, so I can, no. OCS putting it out into regions, they're putting them out into regions, and then running around trying to make as many people as possible, but they're not influenced, it's not a way to have voice. Somebody in the car with me, actually, I wish we had our government offices back right this very minute. It was one room to be able to talk. That was a cheer from a... But that was a room to talk. And when civil servants come up and they get an absolute kicking in the North West, they say to me, oh, that was negative. I said, do you know what? Government office would have felt, they'd have taken that for you before you came up here, and then you could have a discussion. But they don't see any government officials now. So when you come up, you get an absolute kicking because you get all the angst that's been built up for the last few weeks. And I'm fed up of travelling to London at the behest of civil servants for 45-minute meetings that cost me 200 quid to be there. It's pretty ridiculous. So, London centricism, I don't know whether centricism's even a word, so that's a problem. It was when a Kido, an NCBO, put on a conference and went, we're putting on a Future Forum conference, free event, 8 a.m. in London. Do you know what? That's just not free for me. The people's intervention, he just sits there going, you will have your council tax. You will have your bins collected. And there's a lack of willingness to sort of view that there is a regional perspective on anything. It sort of actually really, it ends up with this one-size-fits-all view of the sector. I end up arguing with people who are representing the sector who believe that big society capital loans are going to be a real big boost for the sector. Yes, it will help a few, but it's not the many. It is getting out of hand. I am excitable, sorry. Now I could talk about this to you for about 3 hours. I've got only a couple of minutes left. I don't know how to planning out down here, but we have real problems with our clients. In fact, look, so I got a letter the other day from G4S. We've been in negotiations with G4S. We set up a special purpose vehicle, been in negotiations with them for in theory, a year. What happens is they write to us and go, we've got this idea, could you send us your plans? We spend a couple of days putting together a plan, we send it to them, then we don't hear from them for 5 to 6 weeks. Then they say, we've changed personnel, so we've not been in touch, but we're not going to do it that way, could you send another plan? We've done it about 4 times now, to the point we've gone, enough's enough. And now they've sent us a thing saying, plans changed, none of you are going to get contracts, and in fact, we've got a 3-year plan to deliver what they call their specialist support. And the first line of that says, we will prioritise using services that are already funded by other sources. So for that, volunteer centres won't get any money, because if you're there, then they'll just send people to you, because you must be funded by someone. If you're the Citizens Advice Bureau, you're there, you must exist, so you must be funded by someone. They're going to you. It's not this sort of story that's broke. That's their strategy, and they've been open about it. Yeah. So there's nothing in it for many of the smaller specialist providers. I'm going to run through skills agenda. Oh, I met with the SFA and they go, do you know what, not our responsibility anymore. So every question, it's fantastic. It must be great. We just write the checks. Yeah? The market will decide what is required. It's got ridiculous, hasn't it? Because in fact, you know, totally political head, but all of a sudden the market decides who runs countries in Europe. All of a sudden, you know, but we've got a market approach. A computer says no mentality to commissioning. Yeah? So they told us to set up a special purpose vehicle. We did. They say, register on ACTA, you go on. Can you register with that? Not a chance in hell because you do not meet the criteria. You say, but you told us to set it up like this. You funded us to set it up like this. Yeah, but sorry, it doesn't. And it's like, if the computer can't accept it, you're not in the game. And that will become more and more the case. The more commissioners that are taken out of systems, yeah, you know, yes, there's maybe too much spent in those systems, but if you cut commissioning so much, you cut the intelligent commissioning, and you start doing computer says no, and it will be small voluntary organisations that will lose out first in that process. And my understanding is they're going to increase the minimum contract value quite dramatically as well in the SFA, which is really going to wipe out the game for many small voluntary organisations. I don't know whether I need to speak to this now. Do you know what they are? Do you know what these two people are? This works better in the Northwest. They're vanguards. Sorry. This is my current pet hobby horse is Community First. Community First, the government said small grants to voluntary community groups. Great, fantastic. Nick Hope believes in grants, that is fantastic news. So they set up Community First, yeah? So good, it's local grants. I've got a bit American here. Bad, do the math. Yeah, right. So Wiltshire, is anyone from Wiltshire? Right, so Wiltshire, have you seen this? Have you done this maths yet? Right, there's now a Wiltshire that has got £16,955 to give away. Right? That's over 4 years. 4 years. You've got 4 years to give it away. You've got to set up a panel, a group of people, at least 4, who are representative of your local community. So 4 people are representative of your local community. Must come together, register, develop a plan to spend that money, set up a website. We're going to have 597 new websites as a result of this, yeah, and a plan of how we're going to spend that £16,955. Okay, now then, those people that come together, this is going to go wrong. Those people, that's £4,238.75 a year I worked out, so I'm good at maths, right? You are allowed as a panel, people coming together, to claim expenses of up to 3%. Yeah? So you can claim £127.60 in expenses, tea and coffee, get people to the meetings, that's it. But importantly, of course, these panels need somebody to oversee it, a panel partner who will take legal responsibility for just some of the things happening, who will make sure the meetings happen, do the minutes, that thing. It suggests on CVS website, you go to your local CVS. So if you're involved, you might go to the CVS for this. The CVS can claim 10% of that 3% for taking on that loan. So, in Wiltshire, you can be a plan partner for £12.70. If you want to run off now and fill in the form, yeah. So anyone who thinks full cost recovery exists in any way, shape or form, I'll just spin it around for a bit. Yeah. Social enterprise. When I see a great social enterprise, I love nothing more. There are some fantastic social enterprise out there, but I think it's the most abused term in the world at the moment. It is the answer to everything for government. Yeah, it is both political parties do steer social enterprise the answer. Mr. Lansley was asked, I need to shut up, don't I?
No, you've got 3 minutes.
Mr. Lansley was asked, how would he describe social enterprise? He said anything that's not public sector. That's his answer. Social enterprise need to grab the term, need to grab the definition, and need to be clear about what is a social enterprise. I'm one of the people who are in favour of a bit of a legal definition about what makes a social enterprise, because it really bothers me about the way that a term something good is abused, and that actually it could be a drive to what I call fluffy privatisation down there. Geography's Tell you what, those are the geographies I could think of. In fact, there are some new ones as well on top of that. But, you know, we've got neighbourhoods, local integrated services, clinical commissioning groups, PCT clusters, regions, multi-sub-regions, geographies, all over the place. Really difficult to get a handle on where you're going. Accountability, that's all right, it doesn't matter too much because the market decides. Or the public services white paper flags up the Taxpayers Alliance at one point has been a good independent body to hold people to account. So we know where that is. Local enterprise partnerships. Now I think we've made lots more progress with them down here than we have I've seen in other regions. Yeah, you have events going on, you can identify them. I never thought we could invent something less open than regional development agencies, but certainly in the North West they've succeeded with something that's less transparent. But we're going to have the greenest government ever. It's been an age until I even put environment into my presentation. I tell you what, I just walk around today thinking, is this mid-November that tells me that we've done something wrong with the environment out there, and yet the environmental agenda seems to be going down quicker and quicker, you know, and carbon emissions seems to be about the only thing we talk about in terms of the green agenda anymore, in terms of the government. It bothers me where that's gone. We've got silos creating more and more. What's leading people going back? So we've got LETs, which are different from the work programme areas, which is different from your NHS reform areas, which is different from the way that the SFA is organising, and then local authorities. And then, you know what, at the end of the day, I'm a chief executive and I've still got to run an organisation. So I've got to do all of them things like many of you. So at the moment, this policy field is a minefield. When someone asks me, what's the biggest issue for the voluntary sector at the moment, I just simply say the total lack of clarity. All of their policy agendas, all going on at once, trying to get a grasp of them, feeling you've got a hold of one bit and the next bit moves. That's the challenge for us. Hopefully throughout today you can start to get hold of some of that challenge, but it's only in forums like this that we'll get the chance. I hope that's been useful. Thank you very much.